There are many legends in pro wrestling that can rightly be credited with laying the foundation for today's professional wrestlers. If most of them laid the foundation, Ed Lewis was part of clearing off the land and mixing the cement. Born Robert Herman Julius Friedrich and growing up in the small town of Nakusa, Wisconsin, Lewis was an athletic child drawn into basketball, track, and amateur wrestling. It wouldn't take long for Lewis to center his attention on wrestling and begin winning local competitions. He developed a finishing maneuver he called a headlock, which sometimes resembled more of a front face lock than what is known as a headlock today. Building a wooden facsimile of a human head, young Robert constantly practiced his maneuver and built up his strength with the move. Amazingly, Robert was only 14 years old when he began his professional career in 1905. Robert took the name Ed Strangler Lewis as an homage to the first recognized American heavyweight champion, Evan Strangler Lewis, who was from nearby Ridgeway, Wisconsin. It also helped prevent his parents from finding out what he was doing as he entered the world of pro wrestling without their consent. Despite being half the age of most of his opponents, Lewis excelled. This was at a time the outcomes in wrestling were legitimate. There had been allegations that some matches were fixed or rigged, as there had in almost every sport, but it was before the modern-day predetermined winners and pulled punches. By 1908, a now young adult Ed Lewis was in position to travel, landing in Lexington, Kentucky by 1913. It was in Lexington Lewis won his first championship by defeating Dr. Benjamin Roller 2-1 to take the American Heavyweight Championship, the same championship held by his namesake Evan Lewis. That same year, Lewis began a series of matches against world champion Joe Stecher. The two would have marathon bouts over the title, with Stecher fighting to stay out of Lewis's headlock, and Lewis using his body muscles to resist Stecher's signature body scissors leg lock. Their first match in Evansville, Indiana on October 20th, 1915 went 2.5 hours, with Stecher officially being declared the winner, though neither gained a pin or a submission. On July 4th, 1916 in Omaha, Nebraska, their first rematch began at 4 in the afternoon. 5.5 hours later, the referee declared the match a draw, as the city curfew wouldn't allow the match to go on any longer. Two matches in New York in 1919 and 1920 went 1 hour and a half and 3 hours respectively, with neither man gaining a pin or submission. Finally, on December 13, 1920 in New York, Ed Strangler Lewis defeated Joe Stecher in just under 1 hour and 42 minutes to win the World Heavyweight Championship. It was the first of 5 World Championships Lewis would win in his career, 7, including 2 times as World Champion in the original American Wrestling Association in the 1920s and 30s. Now, to be clear, that's not the Vern Gagne-owned AWA, but a predecessor to that organization. Ironically, as legitimate as Lewis's credentials were as a wrestler, he also played a part in that first turn that led to modern-day sports entertainment. Fans were starting to find the long matches boring, and crowds were starting to dwindle. Lewis, wrestler Toots Mondt, and manager Billy Sandow saw the writing on the wall. When they stumbled upon a former college football star named Wayne Munn, they devised a plan to put butts in seats that would put more of an emphasis on showmanship in pro wrestling. Lewis, Sandow, and Mondt would be known as the Gold Dust Trio. Munn was huge, but he couldn't wrestle his way out of a wet paper bag. Using his look and his name recognition as a football player to draw on a crowd, Lewis defended the World Championship against Munn in Kansas City. Fans expected Lewis to easily win the match and were shocked when Munn won the first fall in the best 2 out of 3 falls match. Munn was disqualified for throwing Lewis over the top rope for the second fall, with Lewis feigning an injury. Munn pressed Lewis over his head and slammed him to the mat, pinning him in less than 1 minute into the third fall to win the World Championship. The entire match was a ruse with a predetermined winner, as well as the series of matches Munn had across the country leading up to the title match. It was all to stir up interest in the sport, and it worked. The astonished crowd left feeling they got their money's worth, seeing a piece of history. Lewis didn't mind losing the title because he knew when the time came he could get it back, which is what he did. Eventually, other factors were initiated, and the pro wrestling we all grew up with was established, all from the seed planted in 1925. Of course, Lewis would continue to be one of the biggest stars in the business, as the change from legitimate sport to predetermined show was not overnight. Lewis would have a 44-year career, entering semi-retirement in 1935, but continuing to appear sporadically until 1948. It's estimated Lewis had over 6,000 matches in his career, with only 32 recorded losses, including the title match against Wayne Munn. That's a winning percentage of 99.47%, which would be impressive even if they were all predetermined. By the time Lewis had his final match in 1948, he was legally blind. Trachoma was slowly taking his vision, though he spent thousands of dollars trying to save his sight. After retirement, he would serve as manager for Lou Thez and help train Danny Hodge, but eventually he would lose his sight altogether. Lewis lived the last few years of his life in total darkness, passing at the age of 75 in Tulsa, Oklahoma on August 8, 1966. Like many in this Hall of Fame, Lewis's story is hard to tell in a 6 to 7 minute video. He is truly one of the pioneers of pro wrestling, starting when the best wrestlers were at the top of the profession and everything was decided in the ring. Today, something as simple as a headlock or front face lock, being used as a finisher, might get booed out of the building. Ed Lewis made himself a legend using it. Not bad for a kid from Wisconsin.